What's good, everybody? Salty here. Just want to remind everybody, drawing contest ends on April 5th. If you want to enter, jump on the Discord server, links in the bio. Let's get down with some malicious compliance today. Here we go. Wasting a telemarketer's time. I keep getting these calls for duct cleaning, and despite numerous attempts to tell them to stop, that I wasn't a homeowner, that they were just spam calling my cell phone, they wouldn't goddamn stop. So I'm sitting in a university lounge and it happens again, so I complain about it. So my friend, we get along well enough, but we're not really friends, just kinda coexist in the same group, says that I should troll them. I reply that I don't really have it in me to do that, but if he wants to, feel free. A few minutes later, and the opportunity shows itself, so I tell him it's the spammers, hand in the phone, and we quickly get everyone in the lounge to quiet down. He then spends the next roughly half hour talking to them and trolling them by talking about his ducks, as in waterfowl. We're all here, laughing silently so as to not break the illusion, and he's talking with them with a completely serious voice, and it's golden. At one point, he asked them how much it would cost to clean his goose and or his swan. It ends when he gets transferred to whoever the manager of these assholes is, who asks him, "Are you serious?" To which my friend replies, "No, of course not." To which the telemarketer actually said, "F*** you," and hung up. A little later that same day, I got another call, I think from the same people, and I let him answer again. They quickly killed the call before he could troll them again, and I've never gotten a call since. "You try to clean my ducks?" "My ducks are clean, Boio." "Yeah, sir, my ducks are pretty clean, but you know, my goose could use a good scrubbing." The customer is always right. First post here, sorry if it isn't great, also not my story, however, it is a story from my mom. When she was in college, my mom would work at Marie Callender's. For those who don't know what it is, think of one of those old-fashioned diners from the 90s. That Marie Callender's pies, right? My mom worked as a waitress, and occasionally you would get the average person who thought, I need to feel better by making people who will do my bidding feel awful, which is why I go to restaurants. One day, one of these entitled people walks in with their friend, and my mom is supposed to wait their table. She goes over and asks what they would like to drink. The friend asks, "Could I get a water and Sprite?" Whereas the entitled person demands, in her own words, "Get me a water and coffee." My mom shrugs off the hostility in the person's voice and does as she's told. She brings out the drinks and puts them on the table. About a minute goes by, and my mom is carrying a tray of food in each hand for a different table while walking past the table with the entitled person. The entitled person puts her hand out to block my mom from moving past, whilst almost tripping my mom, to make sure she doesn't ignore her, and says, "Apparently you can't understand English yet, honey." My mom is of Asian descent, but was raised to learn English as her first language. "I asked for a hot coffee, H-O-T, so heat this up." And then the entitled person thrusts a cup of coffee into my mom's face, as though my mom has a third arm that can carry the cup along with 2 trays of food. My mom doesn't like these kinds of people, but she also knows that the customer is always right. My mom smiles and replies, "Sure thing." She places the cup on one of the tray tables, since she, in fact, has no third arm. Apparently, the friend of the entitled person was nice enough to tell her friend, "I don't think that was very nice. I don't think you said hot when you first asked." After delivering the food she had, she walks into the kitchen with a cup of coffee. There is a coffee pot full of fresh, hot coffee waiting to be poured. My mom ignores it. There's only one way for her to make sure that the coffee is hot enough. She proceeds to stick the entire cup in the oven. After about 3 to 4 minutes of cooking, my mom uses tongs to pull out the cup since it's way too hot to be held. The results couldn't be better. The coffee was visibly boiling. My mom places the cup on a tray, using tongs to make sure she doesn't have to hold the cup. She walks over to the table, smiling, and places the cup on the table, using tongs. The entitled person stares at the cup, almost as though she realized what she had brought upon herself. The cup itself was even emitting steam, the liquid inside bubbling with heat. That person didn't even touch the coffee. Serves her right. Warm your cold heart right up. Apparently you can't understand English yet, honey. You want me to make fancy coffees? Guess all the other drinks will have to wait. This might not be the most riveting of stories, but a long time ago I worked for a chain of posh pubs in London. The one I worked at was Maida Vale, a fairly wealthy neighborhood with several celebrity residents, Jude Law for example. Anyway, I was an assistant supervisor in the pub and was always responsible for Sunday afternoon shift, which for those of you who are familiar with the UK knows, this means Sunday roast was a big deal. And we had a good roast with all the fixins, and we'd get really busy on Sunday with all of our tables full of people who'd come to eat and drink for half the day at least. For whatever reason, my manager had decided that despite how busy we are on Sundays, that we only needed 2 people on the shift. Again, for those of you who are familiar with the UK pubs, everyone typically orders at the bar, but it's table service, so me and the other person on shift were responsible for staffing the bar, pouring drinks, taking food orders, but also taking out the food. Taking out cutlery and sauces, restocking, cleaning glasses, and bussing tables. You're essentially a cashier, bartender, and wait staff all at once. And then there was the one thing I hated the most, coffees. We had this old, slow, partially broken espresso machine which none of us had been properly trained on. Making coffee on it took ages. The worst was that it would take so long that food orders would go out more slowly, and a queue would form at the bar of people wanting to order drinks. I hated having to leave customers waiting at the bar who just wanted a quick pint or soda while I fussed with the stupid coffee machine for 15 minutes. We all hated the goddamn coffee machine and complained about it constantly. Luckily, however, demand for coffee wasn't that high at the pub, given that it's traditionally a venue for drinking alcoholic beverages. But then, one day, corporate management announced that they wanted all their pubs to sell more coffee. In fact, they had quotas of coffee sales they wanted us to meet, and they wanted us to ask every guest that was placing a food order if they wanted a fancy coffee drink, like we were some sort of Starbucks or something. But they still didn't give us a new proper machine, and they still provided us with exactly 0 training on making espresso drinks. For the most part, on Sundays, I ignored this edict. We were so slammed just with regular beverages and getting out Sunday roasts that adding obligatory coffees into the mix would be suicide. Then, one Sunday, my manager was in the pub doing paperwork and pulled me aside and said that he noticed our sales of coffee weren't what they should be, particularly on Sundays. He noted that Sunday should be our best day for coffee sales because everyone's in for roasts. He then perched himself next to the bar to work on his paperwork, and I could kinda tell he was doing this so he could monitor whether I was upselling coffees or not. I tried to warn him. I said, "You know, with only 2 people on shift, when the rush comes we're going to be really slammed. If I'm doing coffees as well as drinks and food service, there will be a significant delay." "Whatever, I'll jump on if things get out of hand," he said. So I decided he should see how crazy Sundays get and just what adding coffees to the mix would do. As usual on a Sunday, a trickle of people start filling into the bar around 11 a.m. But by noon, it's already 2 deep at the bar. All the tables are full, and there's 2 full lines of food tickets with multiple plates of starters, mains, and dessert. It's now that I and the other bartender start selling the coffees hard. We're telling everyone, "You know what would go well with that? A nice cappuccino or maybe a latte." And they're all agreeing with me. I wait until I have about a dozen coffee orders all lined up, and I tell the other staff member that he's on the bar and food service. And I go over to start prepping them with our old, slow, crappy espresso machine. It's at this point that things got a bit haywire. Food starts coming down the food lift, and so the bartender is sprinting back and forth between the bar, the food lift, and the tables. The crowd at the bar is growing and becoming restless. They just want some beer for f***'s sake. I'm going as fast as I can with the coffees, but honestly, it takes a really long time. Then my manager looks up and sees the angry mob at the bar, my colleague running around like a crazy person, and asks me, "Why aren't you pouring drinks?" I show him my tickets. I have 20 fancy coffee orders. Manager decides to take over the coffees so I can go back to the bar, so I double down on the coffees. I'm getting people to order mochas, flat whites, I don't even know what that is really, but now we sell them. Irish coffees, coffee with shots of Bailey's or Amaretto. I'm going wild, and my manager is visibly sweating and frustrated and cursing at our terrible coffee machine. And then the best thing happens. We run out of coffee cups and saucers. He's now making coffees in some styrofoam cups he found in the closet. He's very close to making a cappuccino in one of those fancy Belgian beer goblets. And then finally, he comes up to me, all angry. "Stop offering people fancy coffee drinks." "But you said no more coffee drinks." He never asked me to upsell coffee ever again. What's up with these coffee stories, huh? Yeah, just don't sell any more coffee. Corporate's gonna be really happy on that. Why don't they just buy a new coffee machine? Entitle mom wants her steaks extra well done? Fine. Context: I was a full-time cook at a restaurant at a hotel and had encountered an entitled mother at a supermarket who was determined to buy my knife set and the bag it was in for a measly $50. I declined and she complained to the management there and then complained to my actual manager. I'd forget all about her for the next few months. But when her family came by for dinner, apparently she didn't forget me, or at least the restaurant I worked at. It wasn't particularly busy, but we did have a few reserved tables later in the evening. At that time, I was just a line cook. It pays alright, decent hours, and hours are pretty flexible. The special we had then was classic steak with potatoes. When asked for how she'd like the steak, the entitled mom asked for well done. Now, for all those who are unfamiliar with steaks, cooking it well done without some very special preparation almost always results in an overcooked, dried out steak with no flavor left in it. Well done does not taste good most of the time. Orders come in, and apparently the entire table ordered the steak special. We took special care of the well done steak. When I say most of the time a well done steak comes out dried and overcooked, this isn't necessarily true. With preparation, you can get a fairly juicy and delicious well done steak. The steaks went out with fondant potatoes, parboiled, peeled potatoes cut into thick scallops, pan-fried and basted in tallow and butter, then baked with beef stock and fried shaved shallots. The line prepares for the next set of orders and we're off. About 5 minutes later, a waitress comes back with the well done steak with the complaint that the steak was not well done enough. Cue confusion. A well done steak is a steak that has absolutely no red or pink at all. We examined the steak and it was cooked all the way through. Chef goes out to talk to the lady. He comes back looking disgruntled and tells me to cook her a new steak, but extra well done. Well, okay, salt, pepper, cook the out of a perfectly good top sirloin, plate, and send out. You can guess, entitled mom did not like that. The shouting that proceeds with the following cast. EM, the lady who wants her steak extra well done. AH, annoyed and unfortunate man who is married to said woman. AKS, annoyed kids ranging from older teen to younger adult, a brother and a sister respectively. AM, annoyed manager who has to deal with her. Chef, my old boss, bless his soul. Me, I come in much later. Kids, come on mom. What is this crap? This tastes horrible. Manager, ma'am, you asked for the steak very well done. This is so dry, I can't possibly eat this. Mom, you're embarrassing us. I demand to speak to your chef. I asked him to make me a steak, but if he can't even cook one properly, you should have him fired. Ma'am, with respect, we are not responsible for steaks ordered well done. What does that mean? Enter chef, big boss, God Almighty in our kitchen, Lord and Savior whose right hand holds a frying pan and in the other a big old chef's knife. Chef, it means that we will cook the food how you wish, but we are not responsible for how it will taste. A well done steak is at the best of times a tricky thing to do, but I think we delivered on that. This is not but an extra well done steak is going to, frankly speaking, taste horrible. At this point, the kitchen staff have all come out to watch. A dozen other diners are watching the commotion play out and the entitled mom sees me. She doesn't recognize me for a second, but when she does, she turns red and starts pointing at me. You're responsible for this crap. First you embarrassed me and now you try to poison me with terrible food? Me, makes confused noises. I want him fired. Me, still shocked and confused. Manager, ma'am, you're causing a scene. If you can't control yourself, I will have you and your family removed from the premises. The husband, honey, that's enough. He gives mom a look and she pushes her lips and shuts up. Sorry about that. Maybe steak is just not for her. Do you have anything else that will come out quick so she can eat with us? The manager proceeds to get entitled mom something more to her taste. In this case, a roast chicken. Show's over, back to work. Chef pulls me aside for a moment to ask if I know the entitled mom. I tell him I don't. The entitled mom doesn't so much as make a single complaint until near the very end. When her family leaves, her husband pays the bill. She takes the tips. Joke's on her. Her husband gave the waitress a big tip when she wasn't looking. It wasn't until the manager reminds me about the bad review that I remember her. We have a good laugh about it, and then promptly forget all about her until recently when I saw her at the park earlier this week. Nothing came of that except I noticed she has grandkids now and looks pretty mellow. Still not gonna risk it. I'm pretty much on the exact opposite side of that spectrum. You could throw a top sirloin in front of my face that's not even cooked and I'll probably eat it. Less than 2 to 3 minutes per side. You don't want that juicy juice getting all burned up. Throw some garlic, thyme, onions, a little bit of butter, some salt. You got the perfect steak right there. Well, I know what I'm making for dinner tonight. Alright everybody, that's going to be it for this episode of Malicious Compliance. Make sure you like that smash button and consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. We'll see you all in the next one. Peace. My ducks are clean, Boio.